Welcome everybody to the Larson House in Fosston, Minnesota. I'm Caleb Curfman, and today I want to talk about some of the ways that public history can be done in local communities. Not only that, but the importance of having public history done in these places. This house right here, the L.W. Larson House, was built in 1887 and was relocated to the East Polk Heritage Center in the 1980s. This is important because we were able to establish and keep the character of the house throughout the eras moving forward. The goal of the Historical Society is to make this house as close to the original as we can, highlighting different aspects of it that were here, and also providing unique opportunities for visitors to understand the local history and bring the community together. So let's go take a look at the house. I'll share some of the experiences that one can have when they come here. I'll share the story as to why there's a Victorian house in the middle of nowhere, essentially, at the time, and a few other unique characteristics of the house and how we do public history here. So come along with me. I'm so glad you're here. One of the ongoing challenges is making sure we have enough volunteers because we are not a large enough historical society to have full-time workers. So therefore, most of our work is done by volunteers, or in cases of myself and others, as historians that are working to preserve our past in our hometown. There are 6 members on our board, and we work together to make sure that we are finding ways to preserve the history, but also work on bringing in new information and taking in donations. Visitors are often surprised at how big the house is, and then it's fun to remind them that there were 9 people living under this roof. One of the parts of this house that was so fascinating is that as the house was being built, it was not big enough for the family. And so as time went on, more and more and more of the house got added on to the house that we have today. As historians, another thing that we do, specifically with public history at this house, is we set up displays that show different aspects of the history of our town and our county. For example, we are currently working on a display that will go to the hospital and the nursing home, looking at play in northern Minnesota. So this is childhood games from the 1920s and 30s, as well as one on medicine in the area, which those documents and artifacts from the Mark family are going to be very important to add to that collection. As I said, a lot of this process included adding on to the house, and so we find unique pieces, such as a staircase that goes all the way up that's hidden from the rest of the house between the walls. Now, many people thought that this was for servants or something of that nature, but in fact, it was because they needed more room. We rely very heavily on donations to fill our both our financial needs as well as the needs and the choices for what artifacts we are able to display. Many of the artifacts come from families in the community throughout the county, and so part of that process is when we collect it, we need to figure out who is it from, identify who did the donation or who used the materials, if it's a material, and then finally, how to display it properly within the house. One of the things that we've done at the center is we have replaced the ceiling to what it would have been like originally. So again, 1887, we're looking at a time where this looked pretty fancy for a farmhouse in northern Minnesota. The reason for that is that when Larson moved in, his wife wanted to keep moving to California. And to stop her from doing that, he said, "I will give you whatever you want here." And she said, "I want a Victorian home." And so many parts of this house, what people tell us, is it really looks like a dollhouse, and in many ways it does. So this is the kitchen in which most of the family meals would take place. There's a formal dining room as well, but most of the time would be spent here. I wanted to highlight this room because the ceiling, we took one of the metal pieces of the ceiling tiles, and then we were able to match it and use plastic from a restoring company to make sure it was uniform. And so one job that a public historian may do will be working with these types of small museums, not only to provide history and provide information, but also to help with decorating and to make sure things are of the right period. Once we collect the different types of artifacts from families, be it donations, sometimes when we have a legacy gift given, it will be a bunch of different materials, both paper and in objects. Right in front of me, I have some different artifacts from the pharmacy that used to be in Foston. The pharmacist, Peter Mark, who was given his pharmacy or earned his pharmacy degree in 1893. And I know this because we were recently gifted his certificate. And so his certificate of pharmacy by the Board of Pharmacy in the state of Minnesota shows this. It gives us a lot of information about him. So the next step is to put this information through our computer and put it into collective access. This will allow people to see this digitally, and so people can research and use this information that don't have to necessarily come here to Foston. Other items in this collection include pictures from the drugstore in which Mark was practicing and using these materials. And so I'll use the video will show some of these pictures close up. But to get them onto collective access, we use a scanner, an archival scanner, and then start writing down what we see in here. Some of the skills that we've used in a class in public history, transcribing, explaining what was happening in the images or in the different writings as we go along. We even have some unique items such as this bottle that comes from the pharmacy as well, some of the different mixing pieces. And we have on our pieces of paper that go with it who donated it and when, so therefore we know what's next. Something unique about this is I just gave a speech on Mark's Pharmacy and Mark's Corner Drug, and here on April 21st of this year, this item was donated because it reminded somebody that they had this object. And that kind of highlights another part of public history, providing presentations and information so that the public understands what their community's history is and how they can kind of jog those memories, in this case, providing us with a wonderful artifact to add to the collection. One more object I'd like to highlight is this piano on which the state song of Minnesota, Hail Minnesota, was written. It was written here after Mr. Larson had invited some of the famous musicians to stay at the house in this room, which was actually a room that was meant for entertaining. It included some piano, of course, but also it included a nice big dance floor. All the furniture could be pushed aside. And again, it showed a unique character to a house, again, on the prairie in the 1880s. Well, thank you for joining me on this quick tour of the Larson House behind me, and hopefully you're able to learn a little bit more about how public history can be used even at the small local level.